The dojo hummed with the rhythmic sounds of fists striking padded targets, the sharp snap of disciplined footwork, and the occasional grunt of effort. Sensei Riker stood in the center of the mat, his black belt tied tight around his waist, his expression one of calm arrogance. His students gathered around as he gave a demonstration, barking instructions and displaying his precision and control, his kicks landing mere inches from his opponent's face before pulling back. A show of power and restraint. The audience clapped. He loved the applause. Then his eyes caught a figure standing just outside the open doors of the dojo. A man older, rugged, with a weathered face that had seen things far beyond the world of padded mats and controlled fights. Alex Carter leaned against the railing, watching with mild curiosity, a steaming coffee in his grip. He wasn't impressed. Something about the disinterest in his gaze set Riker's teeth on edge. He was used to admiration, not indifference. A smirk spread across Riker's face as he turned to the crowd. It seems we have an observer tonight. Alex barely reacted, but Riker stepped forward, loud enough for everyone to hear. You look like you've seen a fight or two. Maybe you should step inside, see what real technique looks like. Alex took a slow sip of his coffee, not taking the bait. Just passing by. But Riker wasn't done. The dojo needed a show. Or maybe you're scared, he taunted. Military guys always think they know how to fight, until they meet someone who actually does. The room erupted in laughter. For the first time, Alex's expression shifted. His eyes, once distant, locked onto Riker with a look that sent a chill through the room. A look that said, "You have no idea what you're asking for." Alex sighed, setting his coffee down. "You really don't want this fight." The laughter stopped. Even the students sensed a shift in the air. Riker grinned, overconfident. "Oh, I do." The crowd cheered as Riker stepped onto the mat, rolling his shoulders, already picturing the humiliation he was about to deliver. Alex walked forward, slow and measured, stepping onto the mat with no ceremony, no stance, just presence. "Rules?" Alex asked. "Full contact, knockdown wins." Riker cracked his knuckles, bouncing on his toes. Alex didn't bounce, didn't stretch, didn't move. He just stood there, watching. A small ripple of unease spread through Riker's gut. Then, the fight began. Riker moved fast, like a snake striking. His foot snapped forward in a quick front kick, meant to gauge distance. Alex didn't move. Riker followed up with a hard right hook, his knuckles aimed at Alex's jaw. Alex wasn't there anymore. A blur of movement, Alex shifted, sidestepped, and before Riker could recover, a sharp open palm struck his ribs. Not hard enough to break, but hard enough to make Riker stumble back, breath hitching. The crowd went silent. Riker's face burned with embarrassment. "Lucky shot!" He attacked again, faster, harder. Alex dismantled him. A strike to the wrist disarmed a punch. A shove to the shoulder threw off his balance. A well-placed knee nearly took the breath from his lungs. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't karate, it was survival. And within 30 seconds, Riker was on the ground, gasping for breath. He didn't know what had happened. It had been so fast, so effortless. Alex stood over him, not smug, not gloating, just looking down at him like a man who had seen this story play out too many times. He didn't offer a hand to help him up. Instead, he turned, stepping off the mat and picking up his coffee. Before he left, he glanced back, his voice quiet but sharp as steel. Fighting isn't about looking strong, it's about surviving. Then he was gone. The dojo remained frozen in stunned silence as Riker lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in his life, he understood that he had never truly fought. Riker sat alone in his dojo long after everyone had left. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, casting harsh shadows across the empty mat where he had fallen. His body still ached from the fight, but the bruises on his skin were nothing compared to the wound in his pride. He had never lost like that before, not just beaten, but dismantled. And the worst part? It hadn't even been a fight. His students hadn't said much before leaving, but he had seen it in their eyes, the disbelief, the shift in the way they looked at him. The legendary Sensei Riker, who had crushed dozens of challengers, had been taken apart by a man who didn't even want to fight. Riker clenched his fists. He needed answers. For the next few days, Riker became obsessed. He watched security footage of the fight, breaking it down frame by frame, trying to understand how Alex had moved so little yet controlled everything. He called old connections, searched online, asked around. Who was this man? It took nearly a week before he found him, a quiet bar on the outskirts of town, dimly lit, mostly empty. A place where people went when they wanted to be left alone. Alex was there, nursing a glass of whiskey, staring at nothing. Riker took a deep breath and walked up, standing across from him. Alex didn't even look up. "Figured you'd come," he muttered. Riker swallowed the lump in his throat. "I need to know." Alex took a slow sip, then finally met his gaze. "Know what?" "How you beat me." Alex smirked, shaking his head. "I didn't beat you." Riker felt frustration bubble up. "Then what the hell do you call it?" Alex sighed, leaning back in his chair. His eyes were tired, the kind of exhaustion that went beyond just lack of sleep. "I call it war." Riker furrowed his brows, waiting. Alex set his glass down, looking Riker over. "You fight for control, for pride. You want to be seen as the best." He shook his head. "I fought to survive. The things I learned them because the alternative was dying." The words hit harder than any punch. Riker felt his jaw tighten. "I want to learn." For the first time, Alex's expression shifted, a flash of something Riker couldn't quite read. "No, you don't." Riker straightened. "I do. I don't want to be the guy who got humiliated and ran. I need to understand." Alex studied him for a long time, then let out a breath. "You want to know what I know?" His voice was quiet, heavy. "Then tell me, Riker, do you want to fight or do you want to survive?" The question sent a shiver down Riker's spine. He didn't have an answer. Alex downed the rest of his whiskey, then stood, throwing some bills on the bar. As he passed Riker, he clapped a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Come back when you figure it out." Then, just like before, he walked away, leaving Riker standing there, more lost than ever.